All right, thanks. Well, I'm Sam Markell, one of the extension pathologists here. Greg Endres asked me to talk about dry bean diseases, and he told me to keep it short. I have 5 minutes. And so I'm standing in front of a variety trial, right? Lots of different genetics. They're good at lots of different things. One thing they all have in common is diseases. They will all get white mold. They will get rust. They will get bacterial blights and root rots. They're going to get them all. You know, a little difference here and there. But in general, if you're growing dry beans, you have to think about diseases. And so what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the weather and how that impacts the disease. And the reason is this is the perfect year for it. We've had several different diseases blow up, and for very different reasons. So the first thing I want you to try to think back to is about 6 weeks ago. We had some really killer storms move through, especially from maybe Devil's Lake through Walsh County into Crookston, Minnesota. There was a couple F1 tornadoes that dropped right around Crookston. 7 to 10 days later, we had an explosion of bacterial blights. Worst bacterial blights I've seen since I've been here, and I got here in 2007. They're so bad that a lot of the soybeans are hit with bacterial blights too. Different species and everything, but the same conditions. So the reason that really nasty storm caused a bacterial blight epidemic is because dry beans typically are fairly resistant to bacteria unless the tissue, unless the leaves get injured. You know, and so we think of dry bean bacteria hail. Hail and bacterial blights go hand in hand, but high winds do too. And we usually don't see it, but in this storm there's 50 to 70 mile an hour winds. The leaves are flapping everywhere, there's wounds all over that tissue, and there's heavy rain. It was 3 to 6 inches depending on where you were at. Bacteria just instantly, within 7 days, a lot of the bacteria was just everywhere. So next year when you're thinking about dry beans and you have a storm like that, if you're unfortunate enough to have a storm like that, you should start thinking bacteria right away, because it will happen. The next thing I want to talk about is the last 4 weeks. Maybe not this week, but the 3 before that. It's beautiful days. Really, sunny skies, virtually no rain, virtually no wind, which is really, really unusual. But as a consequence, we had dew everywhere. It just dew everywhere, till noon in a lot of places. It just dew everywhere. And when you have a lot of that free moisture, dew in particular, fog is even worse. When you get those two things, you tend to get a lot of rusts. And we've seen dry bean rust show up from the Missouri River to the Red River Valley, all the way up to the Canadian border. It's showing up in pockets. Not showing up really late. It's not going to do a lot of damage to yield. That would be kind of rare because of the time it showed up. But it is showing up. And this is precarious for dry beans. If we had that weather pattern a month earlier, we wouldn't be talking about white mold at all. Bacteria wouldn't be important. We would have a major rust problem. So next year, if we have 3 weeks of beautiful weather and no wind and bright skies, no clouds and lots of dew, you should think about rust. And the good thing about rust is fungicides are very effective. Once you see it, you can spray it and you can manage it. But if you haven't seen rust on your dry beans, you can look at just about anything that's got green tissue and you'll find rust. You can see it in the volunteer wheat. It's all over the sunflowers. I'm pretty sure it's in this corn, but I know it's on corn on the way up. I saw multiple fields with rust. They're all different species, but they all act the same way. And the last weather pattern is cool and wet, right? Remember, think back to 2009. It was cold every day, and it was raining, and we had a white mold epidemic. But we didn't have a lot of white mold this year. There are fields that are hit pretty hard up by the Pembina Walsh County area, and there's a few along the Missouri River that are hit pretty hard. But when you have a cool period where it's just sequential rain, especially at bloom, you have white mold. So those are the 3 weather patterns that we've seen. 2 of them this year for sure, and 1 of them that we will see again. And you can almost predict the disease onset based on those weather patterns. And that was the biggest thing I wanted to tell you. And you can see a lot of these things in a lot of different crops this year. And dry beans are perfect because they get hit by most diseases. Any questions about any of that? The question was managing white mold outside of rotation. You know, I think Michael Vunch, you haven't stopped to see the white mold stuff yet, have you?
No.
Okay, I think he's actually going to talk about that. He's got some really good trials. So chemicals, contents, things like that. You'll see some of it. Ask him. He's got, like, I seriously think one of the world's best sclerotinia nurseries right here on the station. Best in terms of lots of disease, maybe not best in terms of how you think about it.